Alright, big damage, big damage. Ready, ready, ready? 999. 999. Big damage. 999. Ooh. Our abilities won't even do the same amount of damage. Look at our ability damage. But this, just a regular shot. 999. So if you guys want to do that amount of damage, so here's what I've spec'd into to get all of that damage. So for starters, interestingly enough, you can probably do it with Veil Ranger as well, but I like Duelist because it just gives you flat damage, which could include not only your charge attacks, but also your sword attacks. Plus, this is one of the coolest ultimates in the game. So here's what we're looking at, and you don't have to be max level to actually get all of this. At some point, I want to say you could probably be like level 40 and get most of it set up. But here's what the skill tree looks like. So I'll mention, I guess, the important stuff. So you want to stack as many arrows as possible because you get more damage based on your maximum arrow count. So you're going to take wherever it has extra arrows. Like over here, there's an extra arrows. I think that there's one somewhere around here. There's also extra arrows after you kill an enemy. So you will still have infinite arrows. Now, technically on the bosses, you won't have infinite arrows because, well, I mean, you're not killing targets, right? Oops, I accidentally took out 1 point in this one. But yeah, this is fine too. And then we're also getting weak point damage. Weak point will be the headshots as well as when it's like marked on the enemy. But over down here, you're basically getting as many of the damaged ones as possible. There's also another like arrows gained on defeat. Another really nice one to get is while wearing different armor classifications, you can get extra arrows here. You also get weapon damage, which is great. And there's another one that you can get over here where you can also get the weak point damage and charge bow damage if you run a light helm and armor. It depends on what you want to run. Right now we're running a medium as well as light, so it's up to you. We'll go over items later, but I wanted to mention that this thing is pretty nice to get for a lot of different builds. But yeah, as far as the skills go, I don't really use them, and the reason why is because I want them to be at maximum of our momentum. So the rest of the stuff is kind of just pathing towards it, and I'll zoom out. But as far as this goes over here, this is actually important. So we're going to be getting adrenaline, and what adrenaline does, if we hit details, it gives us, as long as we're landing consecutive hits, we just get 10% damage, and then it requires us to get less, but basically it stacks 3 times, so that's 30% all damage. Obviously, yes, if you get hit, it's going to make it worse, but like if you're hitting everything for 999 and you sit super far back, it shouldn't be that much of an issue. And then we also get the extra momentum here, but your charge attacks now consume momentum and deal more stagger, but we're pretty much just shooting with the bow, and we can deal 30% more weapon damage, and we take less damage relative to our momentum. So we're stacking the momentum and the other one over here, so in total it's like 60, should be 60% more damage. So I'll just zoom out one more time on the skills so you guys can kind of see it. It's probably easier just to copy it this way when you're like looking at it. But as far as the character goes, because the inventory does definitely matter for the build, we're not even fully min-maxed out yet. Obviously we can get min-max, but it's already hitting for 999, and that's the most important thing. So I'm not sure exactly how it works in terms of registering all of the prefixes or suffixes, like basically the affixes on the item. It sometimes will say when you have this weapon, right? But this one has weapons gain extra 10% of your damage as defense bonus. It probably doesn't really matter what you're running here. And then I run damage at high health. Then we have armor damage on this, and then we gain necrotic weapons. This honestly probably doesn't matter either. But what does matter is stillness. So this is minus 50% range attack damage. So basically anything that's not a headshot will do a lot less damage. But we have 300% weapon weak point. Weak points are the headshots. Or again, if it's a very specific thing, there are like other weak points on enemies. It doesn't always have to be a head depending on the enemy. And then I'm also running quick start. This is, I mean, it's only a blue here. We're already doing 999. And then we get damage versus barrier, but it's also that ranged attack. And then the last two stats, the last one won't really matter, but if it is a barrier, yeah, you can get even more damage. I'm running this for extra ultimate recharge rate, but also it just gives us ability to pop our ultimate and we get full HP. There really wasn't anything here that I felt like was super important other than the physical damage, but I need to get one more upgrade. So if I get, as far as more of this hits for physical, because that's what the bow does for damage. So I went ahead and mentioned that, like, I don't have it, but again, that would be ideal, probably best in slot for the belt. And then for the amulet, We get more projectile ability, and we have barrier damage from projectile abilities. This is, again, just for abilities. We can also gain momentum with projectile abilities that are hit. Again, this is with abilities, but when a projectile ability deals crit, you get 50% of your weak point damage is added. So this could be kind of cool, but again, this is projectile ability, not just projectiles. It would probably be better if it was just like flat damage. There's a lot of different amulets that you can consider. This one could be cool, but there's a huge downside of your range attacks can no longer deal weak point. There's also damage at low health, so if you really want to, you can run the rune that reduces your HP to 1, and you can sit super far back, and then you get another 20%. I don't know if that's worth it. You can also run this to get your damage. This works against doesn't work against boss enemies, but this could be actually pretty good too, because this is just 20% damage versus enemies with low health, but standard enemies are always to have low health. Now, again, that won't work on bosses, right? But it still would be an okay thing. The amulet is kind of a slot where I'd say that if you want to run that one, cool, but there wasn't really anything that I found so far that was like, oh, you just gain bow damage, right? But that could be something to consider if it does exist. And then we're running this just because it gives us physical damage. The first and third line are the ones that are important. The rest doesn't really matter that much. And then for the bow, I'm running the Azure bow because it gives us +4 to arrows, and it doesn't lose any accuracy. And then it's 4% damage per maximum arrow. So that we have two things that are stacking. So the other one that I mentioned over here is another 4. So basically that's 8% damage per bow or arrow. And currently with our character we have, I believe it's like 19? 22 actually. Okay, so we have 22 arrows right now. So 22, 8, that's how we're getting the stacking to get so high with this build. But there was another bow that I actually was testing out, and I was getting pretty good results with it. So if you have the True Flight bow, you can also get an insane amount of damage as well. Now, the reason why I like this one is that the special legendary power, this weapon completely ignores enemy defense, and your penetration is applied as bonus damage. So I like this. I think that this could be arguable like the best in slot, because if the enemy has a bunch of defenses, I mean, it just ignores all of it. And this was also something that you can hit for 999 with. It depends on the enemy, obviously. If it's a stronger enemy, you might hit for 8,000. But if you run this, you may be able to hit for more. But this one does give us more arrow capacity. Again, I would say these are the ones that I could suggest. And then as far as the skills go, it doesn't really matter because I'm not really using them. I'm just kind of charging up my bow and shooting. Now, is that super fun to do? Well, I mean, it does way more damage than everything else because look at this, 1,000. This ability is kind of cool. There was actually a ring that I actually really did like where whenever we would use, okay, there was Last Resort and there's another one. There's like 2 rings that I actually think are kind of cool in the build. Last Resort, obviously good for everything, but like there's a huge double-edged sword with that. But there's another one. Yes, your ability damage is always a crit, but it consumes your HP. Now, I wouldn't even use that specifically for the crit on the abilities, because remember, the abilities, compared to our charge-up attack, which is for 9999, which is max, this one over here would just be used to get yourself on low HP, and then when you're on low HP, you can run the other bonuses where it's like, yeah, extra damage when you have like low health. So there's a lot of bonuses in this game when you're on low health. So you can consider that as well. There's also Ascend, the rune that gives you 10% damage, which always is active. But then you can reduce your HP to 1. Now there's another thing that I was thinking about doing. This is where we get almost into another build. But I was thinking, well, if I just keep on activating that one ring, which is called the Last Resort. As far as I'm aware of, this doesn't have a cap. So you can just keep on activating tools, because tools don't spend momentum. So if you do that in the build and you just get a bunch of negative resistances, okay, that sounds bad, right? But you can also run another ring where I think, do I have it on purple right now? I think it's one of these rings. Actually, I think okay, here it is. So if you run Paragon's Knuckle, which makes it so you can only take up to 25% of your maximum health as damage. This is for the low life build. So you run the Paragon's Knuckle, and it doesn't really matter what your negative resistances are at with the Last Resort, because how that works is every time you activate abilities, you get 20% more damage, but you also have negative 20 resistances, which can keep on going up and up and up. I don't know if that thing has a cap. It at least goes to 10. I was trying it out. So if you run that, and then you run this as your other ring, and then you have some sort of leech in your build. There's an armor that gives you leech. I have it. I'll go over it because it's kind of important just in case anyone wants to try to fully min-max this build. But I had a couple people ask me for the build, so I'm giving you guys it right now. So it's called Researchers. So you get to leech 5% of your damage as health. But let's say that we have really low HP. Ideally, you'd probably get none of like the altars give you HP, but you reduce your HP as much as possible, but you can only take 25%. But if I'm leeching 5% of 99999, it doesn't really matter what that number is, because it should be enough to absorb enough shots. Because remember, you can only take 25% of your max HP. But if we hit for such a big number, it should work. So that's another like thing that I was going to go for. And it could like work with the build. So these are the runes that I'm running. So we're getting plus damage, plus penetration, because penetration gets added as damage. And then also, I really liked Crystallized. It's just one of my favorite ones, but you can run whatever one that you want right here. This one's optional, but I would say these two, definitely pretty great. But also with Pierce, when you activate it, you get 100% penetration, which gives you 110%. And then you get, there's another thing where you get your bonus based on penetration, you get the extra damage. So a lot of other potential things that you can do, but that's like my build guide right now. It's a little bit rough. I mean, like I know I have like, and pretty much we're max level, we're at the end game, but there is a little bit more that you can squeeze out. Now, if you do want to utilize your companions here, I would recommend, if you really want to squeeze damage, you can run Adrenaline Rush, which gives you enhanced damage. This isn't really required to hit for 999, but if you're like, I'm hitting for 8, I don't know the exact number of this, but if you really want to squeeze more damage, you can do this. And then you can also run any sort of thing that adds weakness to the build. I don't know which one has it off the top of my head, but you can also apply like weakness or apply some debuff, and then you can hit for 999. As far as I'm aware of, though, it can't go past that number, so it's pointless to go beyond that. But that's how you can hit for crazy amounts of damage. But against some of the bosses, don't expect to one-shot all of them. But I'll do maybe some more testing. Maybe we can have some fun with it. But yeah, that's like my build guide for Dragon Age as of right now, because I had a couple people ask for it, and I was like, well, let me try to finish it. But at this point, if you're already hitting for 999, you don't need to finish it, because it doesn't go any higher than that. But for the sake of doing it, I'm just mentioning some of the other ideas that I had, and I think that we can have even more fun with it. And I'm going to come out with even crazier builds later down the line. But yeah, that's the 999 build in Dragon Age.